Welcome to Heck with Vulnerability. In the human world, vulnerability can be a strength, but for people who manage the digital world, vulnerability is never good. In these videos, I talk about more than just the vulnerability, but also about the products and protocols behind the vulnerability. Today, I'll be talking about CVE 2021-34746, the Cisco Enterprise NFV infrastructure software authentication bypass vulnerability reported by pentester and reverse engineer Cyrille Chatras of Orange Group. The product with the vulnerability here, and bear with me, it is a long one, is the Cisco Enterprise Network Functions Virtualization Infrastructure Software, also known as NFVIS. It's essentially a way to dynamically deploy virtual network devices like firewalls, routers, WAN accelerators, and wireless LAN controllers. According to a Markets and Markets study, the network functions virtualization market has a projected compound annual growth rate of 22.9%. CVE 2021-34746 affects Cisco Enterprise NFVIS Release 4.5.1 if the TACACS external authentication method is configured. To determine if your instance is vulnerable, run this command. If the output is no entries found, then the TACACS external authentication feature is not enabled. So that means that this vulnerability could not be exploited. But regardless, you should still patch and upgrade. So back to the product. This virtualized software-based network infrastructure is supposed to save time and operating costs associated with site visits by your personnel, network device deployment, maintenance, and electrical power, as well as saving on physical space costs. NFVIS is for what Cisco calls the small and lean virtualized branch and is an IT infrastructure product that was named one of the best network virtualization software in 2021. The product vulnerability is described by the National Vulnerability Database as a weakness in the TACACS Plus authentication, authorization, and accounting feature of Cisco Enterprise NFV infrastructure software. Proof of concept exploit code does exist for this. With this attack, a remote threat actor can potentially bypass authentication and log into an affected device as an administrator. This happens when the user supplied input that is passed to an authentication script is incomplete. That's when a threat actor can inject parameters into authentication requests, causing the authentication bypass, and thereby allowing them to log in as an admin to the vulnerable device. TACACS Plus stands for, and bear with me because this is another long one, Terminal Access Controller Access Control System Plus. This protocol was developed by Cisco initially, but it made its way into being an open standard in 1993. It's commonly used for device authorization, administration, and accounting. The TACACS Plus uses TCP, whereas Radius uses UDP. TACACS Plus addresses some of the security shortcomings that were present in Radius. TACACS Plus encrypts the full content of each packet, whereas Radius only encrypts the transmission of the password between client and server, sending other components like username, accounting, and authorization in plain text. So using the Common Vulnerability Scoring System 3.1 version, the base score is a 9.8, and this is considered critical. The base score is rated based on a combination of exploitability metrics, and that relates to attack complexity, privileges required, and user interaction, and then combined with the impact metrics to confidentiality, integrity, and availability. So if we look here at the exploitability metrics, we can see that the attack vector is network. And in this case, that suggests and is meaning that this is remotely exploitable. The attack complexity and privileges required and our end user interaction is low, none, and none. So the attack complexity is minimal. Privileges required and user interaction is none. The scope is unchanged. Unchanged means that the vulnerable component and the impacted component are either the same or both are managed by the same security authorities. So with the impact metrics to confidentiality, availability, and integrity, it's basically a total loss of all of those if the exploit succeeds. So if the attack succeeds, there could potentially be a total loss to the CIA, the confidentiality, integrity, and availability. The loss of availability means that the threat actor is then fully able to deny access to resources on the impacted component. In order to remediate this vulnerability, there is a free software update available for licensed customers from Cisco. That update and patch relates to version 4.5.1 and Cisco Enterprise NFVIS Release 4.6.1 is their newest release, and that is not vulnerable. Below this video, I will link to the Cisco Technical Assistance Center, as well as the National Vulnerability Database entry for this vulnerability and the Cisco Security Advisory link for this vulnerability. And as they say in the digital world, to heck with vulnerability.